be bringing Masa Atran to our gallery for her artist talk. It's been such a privilege to have her work in our space, especially at this moment in the world. She's going to share some about her practice, and then we're going to do a Q&A at the end, so just if you have questions, hang on to them. There's one restroom, it's in the far back. If your chair needs to be wiggled a little bit, feel free to wiggle it. Thanks for bearing with the gallery configuration. We're so happy to have you here today. All right, welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Hi.
Let me play this. Okay. First of all, thank you so much for being here. Your time really means a lot to me. I appreciate you're nice. Actually, it's really nice out today after this brutal winter. This beautiful day, just spending this time here with me. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much for being open to hear my stories. I'm gonna tell you a lot of stories. I hope that is fine. And like huge thanks to dear Lydia and all of the lovely crew here at the Ball and Socket. It's a great pleasure for me to be presenting my work here, and especially as Lydia said that during this time. Today I'm gonna tell you a lot of stories. I'm gonna talk about what power couldn't touch. And I have a few questions in the beginning that we are gonna just consider talking about. The first one is why Iranians are so separate from their government. The second one is what are they looking for when they ask for international support. The third one is how does it connect to women's lives, bodies, and choices? How does it connect to my work, my art, and my memories? And how can we think about love, care, and memory in face of power? But before that, I need to give you some context and some background about where I am coming from. I am from Shiraz, Iran. It's like a city in central Iran, closer to southern Iran. And if you can see like how far is Iran from here, I'm sure all of you have some ideas, but the green one is Iran. It's like a continent in between us and like the big ocean. I was on the way for 2 days to get to the US, and like 2 flights, one of them was like 17 hours of flight from Qatar to the US. And Shiraz is one of the tourist attractions and historical cities in Iran. Iran is one of the oldest countries in the world with rich history. Shiraz is having like a lot of these amazing gardens. Like this one on the right is the Pink Mosque, and this one is Aram Garden. Like these are like palaces for like the previous kings like lived there. And the weather is always amazing. It's like renowned for always being like spring because we don't really have harsh winters. And it's the city of love, it's called. We have a lot of like famous poems, and also Cyrus the Great, like the first empire in the world was there. Persepolis is located in Shiraz also. But also, so many people think that, like when I say I'm from Iran, I think that like we ride on camels or we don't have any technology. Someone asked me like, if you believe, like, do you have traffic lights in Iran, or like, do you have refrigerators? So yes, so that's why I'm like showing you some of the modern buildings that we have. So please believe me, we are not like that. And actually, Shiraz is like great like for cafes and restaurants, and I haven't experienced any of that amazing food like yet in the US. With all the respect, like I'm enjoying my life in the US, but believe me, we have like amazing restaurants and cafes, and there are recently like a lot of these like entrepreneurs like renovating these amazing historical houses into like very modern, like fantastic hotels for the tourists. So when Iran is free, I would like to invite all of you to Iran, but not now, not now. I am coming from like a loving, tight-knit family. These two amazing people on the left are my parents, and my brother is not in this photo, but I love him. And, and I always believed in humanity deeply. I cared a lot about that. That's why I chose anesthesiology for my undergrad studies, because I wanted to relieve pain. So this is me. I believed in hijab. I was the most Muslim student in my classroom, always. I was that good kid that always parents were like, look at her, you should be like her. I was like that. And that's why so many of my friends hated me, But during my first year of university, the entrances for men and women were separate, which is ridiculous because we had to go through two separate entrances, and then we would sit next to each other in the classroom. But they did that for a reason. There was at the women's entrance, a woman sat fully covered in black, checking student IDs. But she was not just checking student IDs; she was inspecting us, basically. If your hijab was not proper, you couldn't enter. If you had nail polish, you had to remove it. If your headscarf was slightly pushed back, she pulled it forward. And if your coat was too fitted or too short, you were sent home to change it, and then you would be able to go in. But I remember thinking that won't be a problem for me. I'm not only wearing the complete hijab, but also for bonus points, I'm wearing this black veil called chador. Again, because I believed in that. So none of these mandatory hijab rules was really affecting me personally because I grew up believing in that. I was like, okay, it's not a problem for me. All set. But I'm wearing the chador and I'm following the rules, but even I was not enough for them. One day, she stopped me because I was wearing a colorful scarf under that black veil. That moment, more than anything, suffocated me. I challenged her. I told her that this is not fair, that others did this too, that no university rule explicitly forbade a colorful scarf. But she had the power, and I didn't. So that was the very first time something shifted in me. Not because it was the first time I encountered control. If you are a human, not even a woman, living under this very unfair, extreme Islamist regime, you always live under a control. But it was very suffocating to even see that very basic thing is not enough for them, is annoying for them. And this was the very first time I understood that it could reach me, even when I was doing everything right. So this was before photography, before I taught myself as becoming an artist, but I found a way to resist. I began making jewelry and small accessories, bright, colorful pieces that I could attach to my scarf. If I wasn't allowed to wear the color openly, I would find a way to bring life into the blackness they forced upon me. What began as a quiet act of resistance grew into something larger. Eventually, I started my own brand, and later I won the Vogue Talent competition for 2 years in Italy. So looking back, this was the very first time I made art in response to an oppression. And I didn't even notice that myself. That's what I am doing. Not to decorate, but to breathe. Not to protest loudly, but to survive. And these are some of the pieces that I made. And then my mother is a great driver. She was in an accident and someone hit her car from the back. That person was 100%, it was their fault. But the person got out of the car and she pulled my mother's chador like that veil is called chador, and said, every problem we have is because of you. That was a moment that we realized something painful. A garment had become a political accusation. On that day, we realized that when something personal becomes mandatory, it stops being personal. No piece of fabric is sacred when it is enforced. The moment something is compulsory, it shifts from devotion to control. That piece of fabric was being used by the regime as a political uniform. That moment changed everything. We realized something we believed in had been turned into a weapon. A symbol no longer spiritual, but political. So we removed it, because we refused to be a symbol for violence. And it was not easy. It was not easy at all. When I came to the US, it gave me something I had never really had before: the choice. With that came time and space to slowly look at my own belief, to ask myself what I truly believed and what I had simply inherited without questioning. It was a quiet process. I took things apart gently. So like when your headphones are like all tangled together, like you have to sit and like kind of untangle them. It was like that. And I kept what felt true to me and let go of what no longer needed. I remember the very first time I walked from my apartment in North Dakota to the dining hall. It was like a very close walk, like 10-minute walk, without a scarf. I was wearing that turban when I was in North Dakota for 8 months when I arrived in the US. It took so much courage to take that little piece off. Even having my hair out took a long time to be able to have that hair out. I was watching everyone. I was expecting something to happen or people like stare at me. But nothing happened. I remember I called my friend in Iran when I was at the dining hall. I was like, look, I am not wearing my hijab and no one is looking at me. It feels great. That moment stayed with me, not as rebellion, but as awareness. This is how my relationship to belief changed, through choice, care, and attention. That moment of walking outside without hijab was small, almost invisible from the outside, but internally it shifted something fundamental. Choice makes you aware. And awareness makes it impossible to remain numb. Once I experienced belief as something I could choose, I could no longer ignore what had been imposed on me. I began to see more clearly, not only my own story, but the structures surrounding it. We adapt to what hurts us. Think about someone who has diabetes and must inject insulin every day. The first time it hurts, there is fear, the body resists. But after months, the injection doesn't sting in the same way. The body adjusts. It becomes routine. Now think about something different. Think about someone who lives next to a train track. The first nights are unbearable. The noise shakes the walls. It interrupts sleep. It feels impossible to ignore. But after a while, they stop waking up. The sound is still there, just as loud. But the mind filters it out. The train did not become quieter. The needle did not become softer. The body simply learned to endure. And oppression works like that. We normalize what surrounds us. We grow used to restrictions, to surveillance, to control. But adaptation does not mean safety, does not mean that it's okay for all of those to happen. It does not mean justice. It only means survival under pressure. And this work comes from that interruption, from recognizing how easily we grow accustomed to what harms us. We get used to everything, even oppression. No matter how beautifully a knife is wrapped, it is still sharp. Mandatory hijab, patriarchal norms, and all of those unfair rules that we have still restrict and harm. Their presence lingers, shaping our lives in ways we cannot ignore. The same as this work. You see some of the shadows are much bigger and blurry, but the knife is still there. We are just so used to that, we can't really see that. And right now, in this moment, the knife is very sharp, it's close to the floor. We can see that, we can feel how sharp it is. On a normal day, when every woman wore their scarf and looked in the mirror at the entrance, thinking, it is what it is. Someone we later learned her name was Vida Movahed decided to say no. In 2017, she climbed onto a utility box in Tehran. She didn't shout, she didn't carry a sign, she simply stood there, holding her headscarf on a stick. That quiet, simple act took incredible courage. And it reminded everyone that even under oppression, saying no can ripple far beyond one person. For almost 48 years, women in Iran have lived under strict laws controlling their bodies, clothing and rights. Protests have been met with imprisonment, violence, and executions. Yet acts like Vida remind us that courage spreads even under oppression. And yes, courage is contagious. It became a big campaign. Everyone were going out, even men in solidarity with women, were going on anything that was higher than the ground, standing on the bench, on a utility box, holding scarves, not saying anything. And all of them were arrested brutally by the regime. It doesn't mean that nothing happened to them. Even Vida Movahed, there is videos of her pulling her down and arresting her. Of course, it's not a surprise. But it was something important. It became contagious and other women began. Quietly, publicly, they were saying we deserve at least our basic rights. And what do you think was the answer from the government to this? What was their solution for this problem?
So double down.
And to stop it from happening, they did this. They built these triangles on top of all of the utility boxes so no one can stand on them. This is how ridiculous and naive our enemy is. So when the government welded metal triangles onto the utility boxes trying to erase resistance, it revealed something important. We cannot block people from demanding dignity. That idea that power cannot contain attention or curiosity is where my work comes from. It emerges from observation, reflection, and lived experience. It is not asking for sympathy or agreement. It is asking for awareness. At the time, I wasn't directly affected. I was wearing the hijab, but I had long questioned and critiqued those rules. I was teaching photography, exploring fashion design, and continuing my own artistic practice. This is in 2017. And then in 2022, women life freedom happened. But it was not the beginning. It was the eruption of something long suppressed. The morality police killed Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old girl, on the street because they believed that she was not wearing her hijab properly. Even having the idea of like having a morality police is crazy. It's like having a police basically driving their vans on the streets and kidnapping people's girls and boys. I remember one time I was a high school student. I was walking with my friends in a park, just having a fun day, just walking in a park. And the park had two entrances. The morality police was blocking the two ends with their big vans. It's like they're looking for a criminal. And I remember one of my friends was shaking. She was so afraid because her shirt was a little bit shorter. So we were trying to cover her so the police don't see her and kidnap her. So this is the fear that we grew up under. Yes, it didn't affect me directly, but I saw my friends. I saw my people suffering from that. So the death of Mahsa Amini coincided with the start of my MFA studies at UConn in 2022. Her death sparked a nationwide turning point in Iran. Protests spread rapidly, led by women and young people. Thousands were killed. So they killed thousands of people to prove that they didn't kill her. So many of them were imprisoned and countless executions. Because if you are criticizing the regime, they consider themselves God. I'm not being sarcastic, like really. They consider themselves as God, and if you are criticizing them, it's like you are being the enemy to the God. They call you Muharib, and they execute you. And they executed thousands of people. They are still doing that under that name. So they can easily just claim that, oh yeah, you are the enemy to God, you are criticizing us, so you deserve to die. So this moment fundamentally shifted my relationship to art. I do not create work to instruct or to dictate thought, but I create to cultivate awareness, to open space for attention, curiosity, and questioning. And now Iran is in the middle of an ongoing revolution. People are being punished for asserting basic human rights, autonomy over their own bodies, freedom of expression, and the ability to live without fear. These are not abstract concepts. They are lived realities affecting students, artists, families, and communities. And in response, my practice evolved. My work became a form of witnessing. Art became a way to hold what language often cannot. Grief alongside resilience, fear alongside tenderness, and resistance rooted in care. I do not make art to shock or to explain politics. I make art to say, pay attention. You're not required to agree with the work or even like it. What matters is that you notice, you remain curious, and recognize that this work emerges from a moment when silence was no longer possible. So, after these events in Iran in 2022, like as I said, I just started my practices at UConn, and prior to that I was a commercial photographer, so I had zero idea about fine arts. And when these things happened, like in the first weeks of my studies at UConn, I was like, okay, I know what to do. This is my responsibility, because if I was back home, I wouldn't be able to do any of these. I wouldn't be able to speak up. Even sharing a story would end up in me being arrested, and God knows what would happen to me. So I was like, now that I'm here and safe, I have my audience, I have my tool to speak about those things, I should use it. So I started looking. I began to look closer at my own world, at memory, history, and the traces of lives lived quietly under similar pressures. I went back to family photographs, bookshelves, walls, albums, and I noticed something unsettling. Women were missing. These photos are from my grandma's home. I browsed through these photos, my grandfather's library, my great aunt's house. She had the same degree as her husband had, and everyone was so proud of her husband being a scholar in the family, and it was always framed nicely on the wall. And she never talked about herself. We thought that she doesn't have any degrees. When she passed away and we were cleaning her home, we found her degree as one of the last things at the bottom of a box in the basement, folded. And the sad part is not just that, is that no one in my family even questioned it. That injection didn't hurt us at all. Or in my grandpa's bookshelf, there is like a lot of photos of like the family members who passed away and we were proud, but there is just men. There is no photo of a single woman member of the family. And the photo in the middle, if you ask like, so there is a photo on the wall. It's my great grandmother. She was also a scholar. Like the whole family is still like speaking great about her. She wrote a book or books. There is not even her name on the book that she published. And this is her photo, fully covered in hijab, but her photo only goes on the wall for 10 days in a year during a religious event that is just for women. And it goes to the drawer for the rest of the year. And I'm glad that I took a photo of that, because at the time that I took this photo, I didn't even think of that, because that injection didn't really hurt me too. So absence is not neutral. It is a form of erasure. This project explores the lives of Iranian women, connecting contemporary struggles to a long historical lineage. Using archival photographs, I highlight how patriarchal systems have long expected women to remain hidden or silent. Women are covered with Persian rugs, hand-woven culturally significant objects traditionally made by women. Like the rugs, women have historically been stepped on. Their labor and presence constrained under the guise of care. And at the same time, the work celebrates collective strength. When women appear together, their unity transforms invisibility into agency, showing that resilience, solidarity, and visibility are acts of resistance. So all of the women removed from those photos with the same Persian rug, they're all together in this photo. And the negative space on top is showing that this project is ongoing until even we have one woman oppressed, silenced in the world. I'm not just talking about women in my own country. So working with archival photos of women, the faces, the shelves, the homes, the absences, I also wanted to show that Iran is more than oppression, and much of it connected to women. I began incorporating domestic spaces and Persian rugs, hand-woven, traditionally made by women, like the rugs, again, being stepped on. And no matter how precious we are, no matter how educated you are, You are deprived from your rights, no matter if you are a doctor or you are a housewife. Your husband can basically say that I'm not letting you leave the country. There were Olympic athletes that at the moment that they were leaving to go to Olympics, their husbands didn't let them leave the country. Or if you want to do a surgery on your body, you're not allowed until your husband signs it for you. And this is so humiliating. And these are just some little examples of that. And because I have always been a maker, I wanted to extend beyond the photograph. I began transforming images onto domestic surfaces like kitchen tools, household objects, items tied to daily care. And at first glance, they appear ordinary, like a knife, a spatula, a ladle, a cutting board. But looking closer, their meaning shifts. These tools are part of everyday life. But for many women, they are also sites of confinement. They mark spaces where women are expected to remain, to labor, to stay quiet. They can be tools of care, but also tools of control. By placing women's faces directly onto these objects, I made that tension visible. Not metaphorical, not softened. The reality meets the viewer directly, at the eye level. And yet, even as these intimate acts of labor and control in private spaces, the larger struggle for dignity, autonomy, and life continues beyond the home, in the streets of Iran, where people risked everything to be seen, heard, and being free. So on January 8th and 9th of 2026, this year, millions of Iranians poured into the streets across over 400 cities and towns, from Tehran to Mashhad, from Tabriz to Kermanshah, demanding an end to oppression and theocracy. The largest demonstrations in recent history. The crowds chanted for dignity, for freedom and justice, and refusing to be silenced. And the response from the IRGC was the deadliest crackdown since the 1979 revolution. Security forces, including IRGC, Basij militias, and thousands of Iraqi, Pakistani, and Afghani militias from terrorist groups in the region that IRGC fuels and supports, were hired to kill unarmed Iranians on the streets. Unleashed mass violence against unarmed demonstrators. Beginning that night, authorities imposed a nationwide internet blackout to conceal what was happening and isolate communities from the world. Eyewitness accounts and right groups describe unprecedented killings, live fire on crowds, and widespread arbitrary detention. Tens of thousands were shot and killed in the streets, and many more were wounded, then killed with final shots in the hospitals, or disappeared and killed in custody. And these were not clashes in a few cities. They were nationwide uprising met with brutal force. People stood unarmed against bullets and repression, refusing to retreat. That courage, ordinary people defying fear, is part of the ongoing story of resistance. And authoritarian regimes respond in predictable ways. Public courage is met with public force. Different countries, different decades, same imbalance. And this is what repression looks like at ground level. Authoritarian systems rely on erasure, but erasure leaves traces. Over 50,000 people in just 2 days were killed. Just for you to get a better understanding of what is 50,000, it's 16 times of 9/11 in just 2 days. A sold-out NFL stadium wiped out. The entire population of A1, Canton, and Simsbury gone in 2 days. More Americans than were killed in the entire Vietnam War. About 1,000 people per hour, non-stop, for 2 days. No pause, no warning, no escape. They killed so many people trying to escape. So they came to kill. They didn't come to just stop this. And families were forced to collect bodies in silence. They were warned not to speak publicly. They were charged for the bullets used to kill their children.
Jeez.
For thousands of dollars. And I don't know if you are aware, Iranian rial is the least, how should I say that?
Least valuable currency.
Least valuable currency in the world. So when we talk about an average, like, in the world, yes. And then the Iranians, like an average Iranian salary is like $100 per month. And they were charging these families $3,000 to $5,000 or even to $7,000 for giving their loved one's body to them. So what begins as control over women's bodies often expands into broader control over speech, joy, assembly, and belief. Authoritarianism rarely stays contained, and numbers become abstract. 50,000, 10,000, thousands. So I asked myself, what does that actually look like? This is only a fraction of names. It's not even 200. And I just wrote their names. Each of them had memories. Each of them had like families mourning for them. So many of their families are like arrested and killed. So many of them, like the whole family is killed. A couple got killed when they came down their apartment to see what is happening, and they had an infant. And they found the body of the infant after 3 days, dying of hunger. So regimes try to bury names, but my work tries to hold them. You can try to hide names, you can try to silence voices, but repression leaves texture. And eventually it becomes impossible to walk comfortably over what has been buried. Watch this. These are the killers. These are our murderers. Are happily chanting Haydar, Haydar. Haydar is the name of the first Shia imams. These religious slogans on the streets happily after killing us. So we didn't learn Islam through theory. We learned it through our bodies, through enforcement. That experience is very different from choice. They have been killing Iranians under the name of God. Anyone criticizing is called Muharib, sentenced to death. But this year, at funerals of our loved ones, we didn't recite scripture. We did not read Quran. We wanted to resist that forced ideology that is killing us. We clapped, we danced, and we reclaimed life. She says that my child does not need any scripture, any Quran. I just want all of you to clap for him. And she's telling her son that, like, I am so proud of you. So, despite all of the blood and the loss, we choose love. This past weekend, Iranians filled the streets with flowers, offering them to police who protected the people all around the world, not the forces that killed them. There were huge demonstrations on February 14th all around the world, especially in Los Angeles, Toronto, and Munich in Germany. And you could see this all over the social media. The police officers were crying from this love. There were so many flowers that they didn't even have any place to hold them. They were just like putting them aside. Their cars were covered with flowers. This is who we are. We are not our regime. We are not fighting for haterism. We are fighting for love, for having a normal life, for dignity, like the life that we are all having in here. And during all of those demonstrations, there was zero violence, zero distractions. And it was just fabulous. For you to see the difference, Iran is not the ideology that governs it. It is a civilization thousands of years old, rooted in culture, art, poetry, and renewal. On this slide, you can see two images from the same moment of Nowruz, the Persian New Year. On one side, this one, is my Hafsin table. Symbols of rebirth, history, beauty, and continuity. On the other side is the Superium leader delivering his Nowruz message, surrounded by none of those cultural symbols. The contrast is intentional. One represents a living culture, the other represents an imposed ideology. Iranians are not fighting for chaos. They are fighting to protect their roots, their heritage, their joy, their right to live fully and freely. My practice is about holding on to humanity, to memory, to love, in a system designed to erase them. My criticism comes from love, from carrying my country close to my heart. I remember what was taken and what still lives. My people, my heritage. I hold them with care and I refuse to forget. So I built my Persian corner in my home. I found ways to connect to my culture, to hold on to elements that made me feel closer to home, while I'm far from home. So when I arrived in the United States, I came with 2 suitcases. One was filled with warm clothes for North Dakota's brutal winter, arriving in mid-December, if you believe. And on the other one, it was filled with small plastic bags of spices, dried fruits, and herbs, carefully prepared and packed by my parents. My mother labeled each of them in her own handwriting. And my father weighed them gram by gram so I wouldn't exceed the airline limit. So when I was here and I began cooking with them and I was enjoying those snacks, I realized I couldn't throw the empty bags away. They were touched by my parents' hands. They carried their love. So I hold on to them like treasures. And I began photographing them inside the luggage, as if they were the most valuable things I owned. And that was the beginning of Ja Uftadan, or settle in. And later, my mom, was able to visit after more than 3 years being apart. And it is extremely difficult for Iranians to obtain visas. My Baba still cannot come, my brother cannot come. They were not even here for my wedding ceremony. But my mother came, and she cooked with her hands. 2 versions of each dish. One of them vegan for me, and one of them with meat for my husband. So my husband has a blast of time. So I photographed the meals arranged inside an open suitcase, not as objects of consumption, but as inheritance. The suitcase became a table. A feast became a portable homeland. I am always ready to pack, not just clothes, but memory, heritage, and culture. In exile, I am building home while carrying home with me. And the name of the book is Ja Oftadan, or Settle In. Settle In has 2 meanings in Persian. One of them means the same meaning as here, like settling in a new place. But also, you should ask my husband, Persian cooking takes forever. It's a very long process. So we spend hours to cook the food, but then you have to wait hours with a lot of patience and love, let the food to settle in. That's why I called it Settle In, because I am trying to settle in a new home, and at the same time, I'm waiting with patience and care and love. And the process was quite a process. Every detail, every image, texture, and written word was chosen with intention. I failed many times while constructing it. I made mistakes, started over, stayed up countless nights, and I had never made a book before. It's my very first time making a book. And I enjoyed every challenge, tears, failure, and successes. And this project includes 2 books. One of them is the luggage, and the other one is a cookbook, and also a short film. So I had been imagining this project for months, sketching, writing, and collecting references. The luggage was inspired by the actual suitcase I used in my photographs, and I reimagined it as a velvet-lined artifact, like a special suitcase with compartments in hidden pockets to hold recipe cards handwritten by Maman. And in the main lead pocket, I placed spices which since carried me back to my childhood home, and you can smell some of them in here. And the cookbook features all of Maman's recipes translated into English, not as strict recipes, but as gentle stories, because dishes are not just meals, they are narratives of care. And this project is very close to my heart. So I created a short film that you can see after this talk. And before I close, I want to acknowledge what happened today. So the US started striking IRGC targets in Iran. And right before the talk, a historical moment in the world and the Iranian history happened. The Superium leader that you just saw his photo got killed. It's like a moment that you find Hitler killed. And I want to acknowledge that the US strikes are targeting IRGC, the military force responsible for decades of repression inside Iran, not the Iranian people. Many Iranians are reacting with relief. Not because they support war, but because this is the force that has imprisoned, tortured, and killed their loved ones. Iranians have been asking the international community for years to recognize that this regime is not only harming its own people, but is a threat to the international community. If you follow the news just for today, you can see that they are attacking all of the Arab countries around Iran. They are a threat to all over the world. So we are asking for everyone to be aware, not for the Iranian people, but for the sake of the humanity and for your own safety. And this is not about being pro-war. It is about people who have felt they had no other way to confront a violent system. Iran is not an ideology, it is not a regime, and it is not a headline. It is women weaving rugs, building libraries, writing books, even when their names are erased. It is doctors, engineers, artists, and scholars. It is a generation of deeply educated, thoughtful people who would rebuild their country without hesitation. The regime may be loud, but culture is deeper. My work is not only about resistance, it is about care, inheritance, and memory. It is about holding on to what is precious: language, food, photographs, tenderness, people, human lives, and refusing to let it be erased. We are not fighting because we hate. We are fighting because we love. We love our land, our language, our history, our joy. We are trying to protect what has always been ours, and that is much stronger than any ideology. And I dedicate this talk to the tens of thousands of Iranians who lost their lives under this ideology. To my Baba and to my Maman for their lessons in bravery and boundless love. To my brother and my husband for their unwavering support. And to all of you, thank you for being here, for listening, and for seeing beyond headlines. With all my love. Thank you so much.
Thank you.